people have hesitations. What hesitations are they bringing to the table? And that is a lack of education surrounding your product or service. So if you can look at the different challenges and realize if someone knew X, Y, and Z about my business, they would be more likely to buy. Then you can insert X, Y, and Z into your content, and that kind of becomes your content strategy.
On the 51st episode of Passion in Progress, Amanda Horvath. Amanda is a content creator that is all about helping you grow your business through the power of video. Amanda has years of experience doing videos and marketing for businesses all around the Austin area. If there are any entrepreneurs out there, this is the episode for you. Amanda really knows her stuff when it comes to creating content for your business online. As always, this podcast is brought to you by my patrons. If you've been getting value out of this podcast and you would love to support me that way, I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/Javier Mercedes. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions. And speaking of passions, if you are passionate about being an entrepreneur, if you're passionate about a business, if you're passionate about video, you are in the right place. We are talking to the one, the only video marketer of Austin, Texas, Amanda Horvath. How's it going today?
It is going amazing.
I've seen your channel. I've seen you speak in person doing panels. You are a very, very smart individual when it comes to marketing businesses online. Let's talk about whatever questions that you've been getting recently to provide value to the listeners right off the bat.
Absolutely. So there's so much that people are hitting me up in the DMs and asking about, but overall, what shocks me is just how basic of a level people are starting at, right? Mm-hmm. As video creators, like you and I both, we like to overcomplicate these things. We like to talk about the very specifics of what gear we have and all the technical elements of it. But really, what the struggling point that most business owners have when it comes to video is, how do I even get comfortable in front of the camera? And who am I on camera? For the listeners, can you give an idea of the typical person that we're talking about? Yes.
Where their approach is, where they're at in their company, and why video is so important?
So my audience is primarily made up of, there's really two different people that I work with. So there's the business owners that have been creating video for several years now, and they're realizing this isn't really working as well as I was hoping that it would be working, right? So they've been producing content, but they're not really getting that return on investment that they're looking to get. Then there's the DIYer that is maybe a solopreneur. I feel like
that's a great term.
Yeah, I feel like you and I would maybe even fall into this category. Mm-hmm. Like, we are business owners that are running companies, but we also are doing it all ourselves. Or it's like for me, I have a one-person business that has contractors, right? So it's still, even though like I work with other people, it's still primarily me. So I don't even have the budget to afford my own rates, right?
Yeah.
And so there's really two different audiences. There's the businesses that can afford to pay someone to create videos. And then there's the people that want to be creating videos, but they can't afford to pay someone to do that. So the audience is kind of a combination of the two of those, but the YouTube audience primarily is the person that is like, I want to start doing video. I know it's the thing that I need to be doing. That's next. How do I start doing it? I have no idea.
On-camera presence. Go ahead and explain, I guess, some tips and tricks for people that want to do video, and what does that look like?
Absolutely. I am a perfect example, a test case of how I was not comfortable on camera or on a stage. Like, I was completely introverted, had a hard time. I would get on camera and you could literally hear my heartbeat through the microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's a lapel, right?
That's
getting way too into details. Continue.
It was a lapel mic, yeah. And I remember, like, I was doing this, I was going to start this company with a friend of mine, and we were recording a video, and this was only about a year and a half ago, maybe now, which was like 6 months before starting my YouTube channel. So it wasn't long before that. And he was like, I can legit hear your heart beating through the mic. And I was so nervous and I was so embarrassed because here I am, I'm filming people, business owners constantly. And I'm like, don't worry about it. We're just going to have a conversation. Like you can relax. And then when I experienced it for the first time, I was like, oh, I get it. I get it now. So the tips that I was able to apply in order to get over how to do this was, first, you need to recognize that every single person is uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The majority of people, there are those anomalies that are comfortable when they get in front of the camera. Likely they were theater kids.
Yeah.
I was not. So that is the first step. The second is to realize that if you allow yourself to truly feel that feeling of nervousness, then the feeling transforms within 7 seconds. Which
exactly 7 seconds?
Apparently. Yeah.
Statistically,
so it will transform and evolve. And then the third thing is that if you can rename the emotion, so instead of saying I'm nervous, if I say now I'm buzzing, so like that feeling of nervousness now has a different energy attached to it. So I say I'm buzzing, which is now a positive affirmation in a way. And I can channel that into positive energy rather than like this negative energy of, oh, I'm nervous. And now I feel like I need to like fake it until I make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just let it go. Don't fake it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I love the concept of changing out your vocabulary when it comes to any challenge. And I say the word challenge because I had another editor on the show. He's done Burn Notice, and for the YouTube crowd out there, he's the editor of Cobra Kai. And he also has an amazing podcast called Optimize Yourself. And one of the biggest tips that he gave me was taking the word problem out of your vocabulary and using the word challenge in its place.
Ooh, I love
and
that.
It's crazy how simple that is, but anytime you find yourself, especially when you're writing scripts for videos, saying the word problem, just insert challenge, because you can always overcome challenges and things of that nature. Do you have any other tips like that? Let's go with a specific example of something. So let's say I run a pottery business and I want to drive more sales to my pots. How would that look?
I really think that the thing that people struggle with more than anything is knowing what the options are for what to create, right?
Oh, I love this angle. Yeah.
So
go down that way.
I always start there with what kind of content can I create? And then from there, let's look at what struggles you're facing in business. Because really marketing is kind of like a flashlight that you shine on your business that points out all the problems. Challenges. It points out all the challenges.
It'll be a through line throughout the podcast.
Caught myself. Yeah, I need to reframe that because I talk about problems a lot in business. So it points out all the challenges. So what are you, when you get on a sales call with someone, and in a pottery business, it's a little bit different, but even still, right? People have hesitations. What hesitations are they bringing to the table? And that is a lack of education surrounding your product or service. So if you can look at the different challenges and realize if someone knew X, Y, and Z about my business, they would be more likely to buy. Then you can insert X, Y, and Z into your content, and that kind of becomes your content strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's play this with the pottery. So let's just say it's e-commerce, right? This is a company, someone is creating these pots and they are selling them online. Mm-hmm. How do you sell these online, right? There's several different ways that you can do it. You can do paid traffic, which is a common thing for e-commerce, right? Like I feel like paid traffic works the best with e-commerce. Products that are inexpensive, that you can literally be scrolling on Instagram at 11 p.m. and you buy a bathing suit. Talking from personal experience.
There you go.
Right? Or whatever.
ROI.
So, yeah. So those, if that's the case with your pottery, then you can create awareness campaigns that this kind of pottery exists. So one ad that I loved that stood out to me that kind of is similar to this pottery concept were these hand woven rugs. And so this ad came up on my feed that described how Persian rugs were made.
Oh man.
And it was the coolest thing ever. And like they were showing how they wash them and just the full process. And it was quick. And I definitely clicked through and looked at the rugs. And they were very expensive. But it got me interested. And if I was their clientele and had more money in the bank, then maybe I would have bought that. So an awareness type campaign of what is the product, and just making it aware of, okay, there's these pots and this person makes these pots and people love them. That's all the first ad needs to be. And then the follow-up ad of like.
By follow-up, do you mean somebody's constantly seen your ad, or at least seen your ad once, but then they're scrolling around some other place and then they see another one?
Right. So typically the way that it goes, I mean, we all have had it happen to us, right? Where we're scrolling or we look something up and then suddenly now we're seeing ads for it on Instagram.
Oh, my iPhone's going to have pots on it right now.
Yeah, it will. It will. So that is a mystery, and people, it's still kind of out there whether or not that is real. But apparently if you have your Facebook app open on your phone, then it's maybe listening to you, is what people are saying. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I know for a fact that when you are scrolling and you start looking on your computer, there is something called a Facebook pixel that a lot of websites put onto their page. And this is a tracking pixel. So it will say, Javier visited this site. Now, that business can't see your personal data, but Facebook has it. So then when you retarget the people that have been on your website for the last 60 days, that's why it pops up of like, hey, I noticed you were checking this out. That's how they know.
Mm-hmm. I guess that would kind of be like a cookie for websites. This is not my specialty, but it seems like it's an emotion, like you're creating an emotional connection with whoever's scrolling by. And then if that's targeted correctly, like with said rugs, then it kind of hits a string. But then if you're not in that real demographic, then it's like, oh, man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that generally speaking today, a lot of people have been focused on paid traffic. And now they're realizing it doesn't work as well as it used to work because we're becoming way more advanced as consumers and we're aware that they're selling us something. Mm-hmm. So when they first came out, we didn't realize that it wasn't an organic post because Instagram or Facebook did a really good job of kind of hiding it within the feed. Now we see that sponsored thing and we know, I mean, even within Insta stories, right?
Yeah.
I actually think where the future is really headed and where most business owners should be focused is content marketing.
So where does that begin?
You and I are in the world of content marketing actually right now. You are producing content. Mm-hmm. And what content marketing does is, one, you want it to be consistent, right? So people are going to know every X number of weeks. And if you want to produce, this is kind of how I describe it to people. Like if you produce one video every 6 months, then the expectation of that one video is a lot higher than say if you're producing one video a day. And you might hear one video a day. Well, that's crazy, right?
Crazy talk.
Yeah, a lot of fun. It is crazy. You guys are crazy, that daily vlog.
Yeah.
But Insta stories is considered video as well.
Mm-hmm.
So can you produce one Insta story a day? I think as a business owner, if you're completely overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, just doing that one thing is going to change your business.
Such an amazing platform too.
Yeah.
It's like when you're scrolling through, you're like, I wonder what so-and-so's up to. And then you see, and they're like, oh man, they're doing some cool things. And constantly over like weeks and weeks of constantly seeing that face, like, man, they're always doing that thing. Well, you know what? I really need that one thing that person knows how to do. And therein lies. I'm totally getting ahead of you, but that's I'm assuming this is going.
No, completely. Like that's, and we start to form relationships. Like we met on Instagram, right?
Damn, on some Instagram.
Or technically, first I heard on Twitter and then rolled over to Instagram.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's like you build relationships with people and people ultimately buy from people. They don't buy from businesses. So, and we used to buy from brands. So we used to, like, I'll use the example of when I was in the 7th grade, it was like, you wanted those designer jeans. You wanted that 7 labels on your butt, right? or whatever. And then like for guys, it was like, you need those like Nike shoes or whatever. We were so loyal to brands, but now we buy these off-brand products and so you have to ask why. Like in the 7th grade, I didn't want off-brand jeans, but now I want to be different and unique. And I want to I want my money to be going somewhere that's supporting other entrepreneurs. And so when I see this other person that's creating these off-brand jeans, but they have me in mind while they're creating them because they're perfectly shaped or whatever to fit my body, then I'm more likely to buy them, right? So it's like that personal touch. We're missing that crave that personal touch so much to where now we're buying.
Awesome. I want to drive this point across for the listeners because let's get into you specifically. What have you noticed by because you're really diligent about posting your Instagram stories, but what have you noticed about being consistent with Instagram stories?
Okay, so I have not been playing the Instagram game. I'll start there in that I have not been posting on the feed. Like I have been overwhelmed with just producing one YouTube video a week. Like that has been a lot of work. So I forced myself, stay in my lane. Don't try to do 2 platforms at once. So that's takeaway number 1. Start with
admirable,
one, right? So I allowed myself to just do Insta stories. So when Snapchat was a thing, I loved Snapchat. And then everyone started disappearing off Snapchat, which made me quite sad because I enjoyed Snapchat, right? So now I don't have anyone to talk to.
Now we're getting lonely.
And therefore I'm no longer on Snapchat, right? But on Instagram stories, it was like on Snapchat, it was this personal connection. And I felt like I could control who saw it. While on Insta stories, it's like, ooh, I don't want 200 people to see me singing in the car, right? Or whatever, like, which I would do on Snapchat. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to slowly kind of get into this, slowly started doing it. And long story short, now I've tried to be like actively consistent with posting stories. And it's purely just like out of fun of creating. You don't have to edit. Like that is amazing that you don't have to edit. So I have grown my following just by Insta stories and not posting at all on the grid by like 200.
Why would you say that's happening?
I've asked this and I'm like, maybe what's happening, I think one, people are more aware that I exist in general because of the YouTube channel. So it's hard to like discount. Like it's hard to say it's just in this vacuum. If you just do Insta stories, it will grow your following. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to say, but I haven't really been promoting it that much. I think when you tag people and then they repost on their stories, that automatically gets you followers too. Cause it's like, oh, who is this person that's hanging out with Javier, right? Like I'm going to click follow or whatever. Yeah. Check out if you like what you see. And if you have when someone visits your page, and I'm curious how you are, like if you visit a new Instagram page, do you first scroll through their grid or do you click, if they have a story, do you click to watch the story?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think it depends on who the person is. Because there's just some people that have like out of this world feeds. Yeah. There's one, I think it's called Tube Stories. This guy that does light painting and the stuff, he has this bullet point, like the bullet view from The Matrix. Like he utilizes that technique where it looks super slow-mo, but he keeps the shutter speed longer for each photo. And then he creates these 360 like amazing videos. So his whole feed is just like these amazing photos, these amazing videos, but his Instagram stories is just the behind the scenes of him doing it. And I'm like, wow. The videographer in me is like, ooh, how is he doing these things? But not only that, but you can have a one-on-one chat with the person. With somebody like that, it's like, it's both sides of the spectrum. Now, obviously with somebody like you, what I was going to say from my standpoint is because you're posting consistently on your stories and most of the time you're either interacting with or doing something that's like relevant in my space, you're always like top on my feed. I think it would be word of mouth. I think I would be like, if I were out with some of my friends in Austin, Texas, and then we were talking about something, if I was out with any of my other creator friends and be like, oh, have you followed Amanda? She does this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I know about that person. But I think the three things where you're doing YouTube, You're also doing the stories and then kind of like the word of mouth. But maybe what I'm talking about is an anomaly and it's more the posting and tagging people.
I definitely think word of mouth is key. Honestly, my entire business, I've grown word of mouth. But I've played the game too of like SEO, right? So like if you go to
with Instagram?
Austin videographers, no, just in general.
Oh, okay.
So like if you Austin videographers, I'll pop up as like on the first page of Google only because I got on Yelp early, right? So like you have to play the right game and have the right conversion opportunities, I suppose. Like if someone hears about you and then they look you up, then they either see what they're expecting to see or they have your expectations exceeded, right? So you have to play that side of the game. How I've been able to grow my business significantly is by that word of mouth. So when you meet someone and you're like, hey, let's connect, people hand me a business card and I'm like, I'm not going to use this. Like I now straight up say that. I'm like, do you have a phone? Like add me on Instagram.
Yep.
And then when they add me on Instagram, I might disappear into their feed and never pop up again. Or I might somehow pop up in their stories and now they start engaging with me, right? And then you're further building that relationship.
Hottest tip of the day right there. I am the same way. When we both attended Vid Summit, we didn't connect there, but when I was at Vid Summit, so many people were handing out business cards, and I was like, what are you on Instagram? And so here's the thing about Vid Summit. When you're talking to people, there are the most upper echelon of creators there. There's people just like when I was there, I was just starting out and probably had like 100 followers or whatever. And you're talking to people. And then at the end of the conversation, you're like, oh, so what are you on Instagram? And then they're like, oh, I'm this. And then you look, it's like, oh, 20 million followers. And I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
But I will say the most is coolest, most amazingest thing about that is a lot of those creators that had like the 20 million or like 15 million, 9 million followers, I would connect with them and be like, hey, here's me on Instagram. And I'm 9 months out, 10 months out from Vid Summit, and they're still engaging with me on Instagram. And it's cool to be like, oh, here's this person that's like way, way beyond in their Instagram journey, but they still appreciate what you're doing as a creator. And I think that's what's really powerful about Instagram stories or just Instagram in general as a business card. I'm really curious to know your opinion on the importance of a portfolio online versus your social footprint. And when a client looks you up, just like what you were saying, if you are a video creator or if you're a business person, let's approach this from a business standpoint. You're a business, you want to hire a videographer. What should they look for?
I am really big into telling videographers, like, don't have a portfolio page. Like, that is the worst thing that you can do for your business.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's just no one cares. So I'm big into no one cares about you until they know that you can help them, right? So when
another hot tip, God, coming hot with them.
So when you land on so a business owner goes to Google, they type in videographer Austin, right? Yelp pops up or other random websites pop up. Some people are paying for Google ads, so they'll pop up first, right? So they'll immediately think of what you do. You're going to open 5 tabs with whoever you find. Then you're clicking through each tab individually. When you look at the first one, it might be just a portfolio page. You might watch 1 or 2 videos. And as a business owner, you have no idea what you're looking for when hiring someone. So for you, it's like, yeah, this looks good, I guess. I don't know. And then you click to the next person. Oh, they have a little bit better graphic design. Okay, I'm going to X out of that first person because I like their aesthetic more. Okay, then I watch their video. Yeah, they're pretty decent. Click to the next person. Now that person actually has thought about their business tactics and they have specifically chosen the one video that they want you to watch, which might be their reel, right? Which a lot of people do. So they say what they specialize in, and then they have that reel. Okay, now I feel this person has told me that they specialize in X, Y, and Z. We specialize in creating videos for e-commerce companies, right? Like that might be a line. And then they have their reel. Okay, cool. Well, I'm either an e-commerce company and I reach out to you, or I'm not an e-commerce company and I keep going. Then say the next person has a brand video on their website that describes who they are, what their approach to video is. when someone starts watching that and starts to see the person behind the business, that's when they really click in and they're really going to work with you.
Ooh, boy.
So like early on, I think I attribute a lot of my success to like having it be me, a person, because businesses, they think when they see a business, they're like, oh, this is going to be too expensive for me to work with. And as creators, we often even use language on our site like we take full, whatever. And we like exaggerate how big our team is, right? Like I've been guilty of it for sure, but people want to work with people.
Yeah. Again, it sounds like an emotional connection, a personal connection. We've looked at it from the business side, but if you're a person in video establishing your authority in the space, I like this opinion of Roger Deakins, right? Cinematographer, doesn't have an Instagram account. At least I don't think so. Peter McKinnon, cinematographer, obviously has an Instagram account. Has a YouTube channel, is very, very popular. They both go about it two different ways, and they're both very accomplished in their respective mediums. What do you think is more important in 2019?
Man, I really think it depends on the person, right? It's because when you came to a panel the other day where one of the panelists doesn't want to be front and center in his business, right?
Yeah.
So that's a personal decision to not be front and center. And I've had mentors actually along the path that have been that way. And they specifically told me, hide behind, like build something out that isn't related to you, like make it look super professional and whatnot, right? And hide behind the scenes. So that works for some people. And so I don't think you can, like I said before, like we've been talking about with word of mouth, there are plenty of ways to hack marketing by word of mouth and by networking. That's how things were done for years, right? You do not need to have a social presence. But like we were talking about before, when you are at Vid Summit and someone says, hey, I don't have a business card, what's your Instagram? How much, I personally, whenever someone says it, I'm like, oh, my Instagram is terrible. Here we go. They have no idea who I actually am. So I think that we do have a responsibility to kind of educate people on who you are and what you stand for by using these social platforms.
Takes time.
Takes time.
Would you say about like 51 episodes of a podcast amount of time?
Yeah, I get it.
There you go. But by me talking to you in your earlobes, spend some time with the listeners.
I would be very curious, actually, because I think at what stage, and this would be interesting probably for the audience too, and I don't mean to hijack this, but how many podcasts before you felt like people started to see you as a thought leader?
You know what's interesting to me is, I'll relate this back to the Instagram account, right? Obviously, a lot of my inspiration comes from Gary Vee and other people like him, the motivational speakers, even though Gary Vee doesn't really try and classify him as that, but he's there. In my own content, when I started out, in the very beginning, I was like, all of their content is them saying stuff about things or them giving motivation. And I'm just like, who am I to be like, hey, you should get motivated to go out and pursue your passions and do all this stuff. Even now, what I do is I like to post the quotes, the clips and everything from the other people because they're the respective authorities in whatever their career, craft, or whatever it be. But people get more accustomed to what you are all about as you just keep, I don't want to say shoving the content in front of them, but as you are consistent about what you are doing. And now at this point, I can be like, oh, I'm at a year of doing this podcast. I actually have specific examples of people should if you want to go out and pursue your passions, here's this one person that did X, Y, and Z, and she now has a radio show talking about her wine stuff. Here's these people that got help at a rehab center because I could go on and on.
You could be a connector.
Yeah, also a connector, but at the same time, now I have actual examples as opposed to just saying something on a microphone, which I believe in the podcasting space, there's a lot of people that can say a lot of stuff. And then you're just like, well, where's this coming from?
Right.
And then
In every space.
But the other thing with that is you don't know their story, and the more time you spend with them, or the more time you see what they're up to and be like, oh, know what? That person actually is putting in the work to do whatever, actually knows what they're talking about with whatever subject. The other thing too is I meet people new every single day. Like, obviously, you case in point. And what really helps with that is just having your motto or whatever, your one-liner, or the thing that I say at the beginning of my podcast, having that down pat, just to be like, hey, this is what I do. Just like with the beginning of your videos. In fact, for the listeners, can you say what you say at the beginning of all your videos? For
sure. So I always say, I'm Amanda Horvath, and I'm all about helping business owners and entrepreneurs leverage the power of video without breaking the bank or taking up tons of your time.
And the thing I love about those things is it gives you a guiding beacon of, should I make this content today? Am I going to do a vlog about this thing? Well, if I make a vlog about this thing, what does it entail, and how does that tie back into what I'm doing? The biggest struggle for me is I really love doing Premiere Pro tutorials, but what does that have to do with about the passion thing? Well, I think over time people can recognize that, like, okay, he's really putting in the work to do this kind of stuff. Plus, in the creator space, is like, I want to provide value in whatever way that I can with the experiences that I've had. So that's kind of where it's at.
No, I think the one-liner that's another thing. It kind of brings us back to the first thing that people really struggle with, is finding your voice. Like, who are you? What do you stand for? And why are you producing content? And then that's like one of the hardest questions you can ask.
It is so tough.
Yeah.
Even after a year of doing this solid, it's like, once you get stuff down, it's like, cool, now I can really make content. Even though, like, for me at least, what took to get to that point, obviously I'm still growing and learning, is just doing it like straight up Nike. If we're going to keep bringing up Nike, but you just have to keep making stuff to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what you really hate doing, and then making things that you really hate doing more efficient.
Completely. I agree. And I think that's why Insta Stories is such an opportunity to business owners that don't know what kind of content they want to produce, is because it's a testing ground. It's gone in 24 hours, right? So start talking about stuff, start seeing what you're kind of putting out. Granted, it is different than if you were making how-to content on YouTube, but still, like you said, it's like, just start. Just start somewhere.
All right. I want to pivot the conversation in... I don't know how to relate this to still the same business owners and creators and all that other stuff, but I definitely think this is a relevant topic. Let's talk about female creators in the YouTube space and what that is now in 2019. Now, personally, I love, like, right now I'm wearing a women's soccer jersey because I love women's soccer. About to happen with the World Cup, but and also, if Carly Lloyd is listening to this, you should come on the podcast. Anyhow, may have DM'd her, maybe not. Maybe I'll cut that out. Maybe not. Hey, audience, if you want to DM Carly Lloyd to get on the podcast, I'm just going to keep saying it, and let's move on. Female creators in the spot. Personally, people that I follow and that I love and they've also been on my channel, people like Alex Gasaway, Audrey Ember. And you know what, like, when I'm thinking about that, it's like, and my list is growing short. Yeah. And that, like, and you. And Red Romina. Gosh. So I think of another person that crushes it on all social platforms is Red Romina. I have no idea how she has that on lockdown, but like,
that much energy.
Yeah, if you want to follow somebody that sets an example for how to do social right, follow Red Romina, because she has equivalent numbers on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. It's almost scary how she and Facebook, like all of her social platforms, there's no one like superseding the other. She's really good at it. Yeah. But female creators in the space, as you have been doing this for a year, what have you found? And then, like, what is it like being a woman on the platform?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I've already lived in a man's world as a videographer. Mm-hmm. So I think in general, videography is primarily men. And if you think about why, it's like you got to lug around this heavy gear, and you really kind of have to, like, it's just this different mentality, and you're often working alone. And I think a lot of females prefer to work with people. So coming into this YouTube space, it has been really difficult to find female creators that I really get along with. And in general, okay, I'm going to actually take this in a different direction. One thing that I'm recognizing more than anything is that anytime that I'm at an event and I'm trying to get testimonials and just pulling people from a crowd to do testimonials, I'll ask a guy and a girl, and the girl always says, I'm not going to do it, but he'll do it. And that is
this is for your video business,
yeah,
right?
So for a video business,
yeah.
Right? I totally took a tangent there. But
no, that's fine.
I think this does a really good job of describing what's happening in terms of female creators online, is they point to someone else and say they should be the one creating, not me. And it's it's a shame because like as a female, you have more things to think about, right? Like we're more vain and we want to like look good and all this different stuff. But that is directly impacting the other people, the other women out there that feel like they want to do this, but we don't have role models to look up to that really do it. So Sunny Lenarduzzi, are you familiar?
Yeah.
So she really was like a big reason for me to get on YouTube.
Can you explain who she is for the listeners?
Absolutely. So Sunny Lenarduzzi runs a group called YouTube for Bosses, and she very specifically focuses on helping people launch YouTube channels. So if you're interested, then I highly recommend checking her out. But she's this bubbly, fun, cute female that creates content, and she lives in Vancouver. And, you know, she rocks Lululemon. She talks about Lululemon all the time. Like, I'm like totally her tribe, right? Of like people. And so watching her talk about this stuff, it was like, oh, this is like, that I can see what this would look like if I was to do it, right?
Like if you were in her shoes teaching other people to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, or just like the fact that I'm watching a female do this, it now paints the visual in my mind that this is possible. And so I just don't think that we have enough role models out there that are doing it. And so it takes someone to step out of their comfort zone, start talking about something that they feel like they have maybe imposter syndrome to talk about, but get out there and start talking about it and just start sharing. I just think we need more females on camera.
You know what's interesting too is when we go, or like even at that panel that we were at, I want to say it was 50-50 that was there. I can't recall, but I mean, you were looking out into the crowd, and it was a significant amount of people for an event like that. And I want to say it was like men and women represented.
Was a perfect mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess in my regard, when I look at your content on YouTube, I like everything that you're talking about that you're very much an authority in, like, you know your stuff when it comes to cameras, and especially with the experience of when you're referencing any like, oh, you should bring this light or you should use this kind of setup because of this one time when I did this one thing. You can tell that you've lived through so much stuff to be an authority in that medium.
Lots of failures.
Yeah, exactly. And what I want to know is like, do you think that your growth is heated because you're a girl on, or sorry, you're a woman
fine.
on.
I'm totally fine. I call myself a girl all the time.
I don't like this is the thing, because like for me, personally, getting personal on the podcast, like my wife is the breadwinner of the family right now, like because obviously I took the plunge and now I'm doing entrepreneurship and everything like that. So as it consistently grows, hopefully I can bring in some cake like later down in the line. But growing up, my mom was the breadwinner of the family. Like I've always been surrounded by very powerful women that knew like, let's get things done, you know? Like she raised a family of 5 kids. Like that whole business. What do you think it takes for female credit? I was putting both together, but for female creators to get credit on the platform.
I think honestly it takes females watching females. Mm-hmm. It's so easy for us to just watch Peter McKinnon and not watch Lizzie Pierce. You know what I mean? But those are 2 YouTubers for the audience as well.
Yeah.
But I think the more that we can support other females and start watching their content, like I've considered actually unsubscribing to a lot of guys just so that more females start filling my feed, so that I can start seeing how other females are doing it and start supporting them too.
That's awesome. That's crazy. Because
it's hard to find the other females. Like they don't pop up as often. And I think that females need to understand that like there is a masculine and feminine balance when it comes to this stuff. you have to play the YouTube game and that you got to create how-to content. Like you can't just be cute and fun the whole time. Like you got to have like substance to your content, as well as like, so like the cute and fun is like the feminine side, right? And like the flowy, and you're just going to do whatever you want and turn on the camera. And then the how is the masculine side. And so I think if they can just learn the system of what's happening on YouTube and how to actually play the game properly, then I think that we'll see a surge at that stage. So.
Yeah, for sure. Like, just to share some of my stats, I think it's only like 10%, in probably at most 20% of my demographic is female. Yeah. But getting back to...
And mine too.
Yeah, and getting back to when I was in college, one of my favorite friends and also like audio engineers, I went to audio engineering school. One of the best people in all of the class was a girl. I want to say it's a competitive advantage because you are a part of a unique set of people on the platform right now.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. It is a competitive advantage, but they also say that like if there is two females that are talking about a subject, then people are less likely to watch versus if it's one male and one female.
That's crazy, because even in my own mind, like I'm thinking about that and I think I would click on another video.
Yeah.
Which is like, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
Now that you've said it, I'd probably think about it before I did it, but that's really weird to think about.
And it's because as females, we have learned to adapt the stories that men tell and adapt them to our own experience. So like when a guy talks about being a dad, we can relate to it in the term of being a mom, right? But if a guy hears someone talking about, a female talking about being a mom, he immediately tunes out and doesn't relate it to his experience. So females have just become better at understanding the male story and the male narrative than males have become at relating to the female story.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into the creator space. If somebody wants to start creating today, they've made the choice, they want to start filming themselves doing whatever, besides their on-camera presence, what's something that from your experience this whole past year, like give me something, it could be something as simple as don't forget batteries, to something more philosophical like mindset wise, like what are some tips that you could give to people that want to create content?
I think the number one tip is to add it. I'm huge into affirmations. Affirmations are like, have changed my life. So if you could just do one thing, even if you don't start producing content yet, you just have a reminder go off on your phone. You can use the reminder app on your phone that says, I am a creator, or I am consistently creating videos that my audience loves, or I am comfortable in front of the camera and on stage. And you just start saying that to yourself every single day. Eventually you believe it and you'll naturally start acting. So I'm big into training. It's like the elephant versus the ant, the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind. Mm-hmm. Even if you want to create content, but your subconscious mind has all these fears associated with it, you need to strip down those fears before you'll actually start taking action. So why not start stripping down the fears from the get-go?
Boom. There you go. Give me something specific that happened to you. Like, I know from you talking on your channel, you batch created your content, then you went on a trip, then all of your content was already unbatched. And by that, I mean, you already released all the content, because I've had the similar thing happen to me. Right. Then you're making from week to week, things of that nature. Like when you're in the thick of things, looking back, what would you tell yourself?
Absolutely. Being consistent first and foremost, and forcing yourself to hit the deadline.
Love that.
Yeah. It's like knowing that there's a deadline Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. Like hit it. No excuses. Hit it.
What do you say to people? And I think this is important because Cody Warner pointed this out in his podcast. He had this little soundbite about, like, say you have 5 followers, right? But you have the mindset, like you have this idea, you have this idea in your head, and you know where you want it to go, and you're not where you want it, where it's going to be, but other people around you don't see it, but you know what it is. Totally. Like, and it could be like you're already at the place where you have 1 million followers or whatever that may be. I think that's the kind of thing, like even if other people don't see the idea that you have at that point, that's where the consistency comes in play. And then when you wake up and like for me personally, it's like every Wednesday a podcast comes out. Now the video portion may not come out because I had to export and Premiere was a jabroni, but the audio portion will always come out on Wednesday. I think consistency breeds all of the assets that you need to garner as just a person, as a creator, or whatever you want to do in life.
Yeah. And I think to your point, like what Cody was saying and the way that he opened the podcast, which if you guys haven't listened to that episode, you should.
Hey,
it's awesome.
Thanks.
So anyway, it's like you need to believe that you are the person that will be that in the future. And if you can't see it for yourself, then no one else is going to believe it. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was my lesson at 6 months was if I need to figure out a way to produce a video once a week where I actually enjoy it, rather than thinking, oh, I just need to hit that next mark where I'm actually making money and then I'm going to enjoy this. Or, oh, I need to, have X number of followers in order to enjoy this. No, you can enjoy it today. You just got to figure out how.
Boom. There you go. Love it. Love it. A couple questions, and I think we already talked about one of them that I talked about at the end of the podcast is, why do you do what you do?
I do what I do so that I can have freedom, creativity, and connection with people. If I have to say yes or no to something, then I ask the question, is it going to give me more freedom? Am I going to have a new connection from it? Or am I going to be able to create something?
At what point did you set down the entrepreneurial path?
I started my entrepreneurial path after being fired or laid off from a company that still to this day owes me $25,000. And I had to start.
Wow. I don't know if you could talk about that, but that sounds like a good catalyst in order to get to the point where you're at today.
Right.
Which leads me to my next question, which I feel like we've really hammered across this point. But in order to achieve what you've achieved, where you're at today, what would you tell people? Or if you're going back to, say it's right when you got let go, what would you tell that person to get them on the path to where they're at right now, or where you're at right now?
Listen to your intuition. Like, it knows where you should go. I know that sounds like super woo-woo, but it's so true. If you can just listen to what your gut is telling you and just stay on the path and believe that everything happens in perfect timing, then you're going to be good to go.
I have another question on that, because I know when I was at the panel, you talked about you were really big into fitness, right? How much do you think doing exercise or whatever it may be contributes to your overall performance day to day?
Great question. It totally boosts my dopamine. I think that's what it is, right? When you work out. And I just have a certain clarity. I wake up in the morning, I go straight to the gym. And even today I woke up at 6:30, popped right out of bed, which is not always an occurrence, but it did happen today. Popped right out of bed, got to the gym, had my whole routine, actually listened to one of your podcasts while I was working out.
Oh, which one?
The last one.
Oh, awesome.
On the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So like get in that headspace, and I was driving into work. I kind of got distracted, took a while showering, doing whatever, and was driving into work at like 11 a.m. And it was like, you know what? Like, that's okay. This is why I'm an entrepreneur. But because I've already worked out, I've already showered, I've already listened to a podcast, I can feel good about going into my day.
Awesome. With that being said, do you listen to other podcasts like all the time?
I listen to tons of podcasts.
What would you recommend to other people that would listen to a podcast like this one?
Yeah. So if this podcast resonated with you, then I highly recommend going over to Engage Video. I think it's Engage Video Podcast. I need to make sure. I'll make sure that Javier has the proper link.
Yeah.
But it is awesome. And it's all about video marketing, which is, I haven't heard anyone talking about the things that I talk about on a daily basis until I found this podcast. Then I also recently got connected with the Gold Digger podcast with Jenner Kutcher, which is like,
dude, hers is like
so good.
It's like you get crack on crack of, if you're an entrepreneur, listen to it. The thing with hers though, And it could be different at this point in time, but I feel like once you listen to about 10 of her podcasts, you get the overall message of what she's trying to drive across. And then depending on if there's an interview that she has, then it's like, cool, I get it. And then like actually act upon the stuff that she says. But she gives you like the nitty gritty, like do this.
She's
you know?
awesome. And she's just so fun and everything. And Online Marketing Made Easy by Amy Porterfield has been the most influential podcast that has gotten me where I am today. So that's another one.
There you go. Well, what can people expect to find on your YouTube channel?
If you're looking to leverage the power of video this year and you don't know how to start and you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money, then follow along because I'll tell you how to make it happen.
Yeah, if I could recommend to anybody that is watching or listening to this, just go to her page, go to most popular videos, and then just watch the first 15. You keep them so short and informational that it goes by like butter on bagels, because I had a bagel with some butter this morning, and that's the analogy I'm using for this. If people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
On Instagram, I am ahvisions, and then my YouTube channel is just youtube.com/Amanda Horvath.
I know at the panel you were talking about scheduling some one-on-ones with people that wanted to do stuff in front of a camera. Is that something that you're still doing, or is there anything else that you're up to right now?
I am in a giving stage for sure. So if you hit me up in the DMs and you have questions that maybe this podcast spurred some ideas that you have and you are looking to just kind of pick someone's brain about them, then I might be down. So hit me up in my DMs on Instagram, and if I have the time, I'll make it happen.
Yeah, if there's any businesses or people that are thinking about starting a business, any entrepreneurs, and case in point, I know my sister-in-law, Heather, she runs a conservatory out of Colorado, and a lot of the people that I have on the show, like marketers or anything like that, she's like, oh, let me pick up this idea. But I know from her standpoint, they're like, what's our budget for video? What do we do? And I know somebody with your skill set and the experiences that you've had, if somebody like her were to reach out to you, there would be so much an abundance of information that you would be able to parlay onto people like that. And especially if you are going into the landscape of, I assume paid trafficking and things of that nature, like what works with the script, what doesn't work with the script. And here's, from my experience, all these different things. I'm totally making assumptions about this, but from viewing all of your content, I think it's true. All right. Yeah. So if you would like to tag me on anything with this podcast, I'm at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier, Mercedes, just like the car, X. And until next episode, live a life of abundance. I'll see you guys on the next one.